The much-anticipated presidential debate between incumbent Trump and candidate Biden kicks off tonight from Cleveland, Ohio. It's the first chance to see the candidates go head-to-head on a range of issues.
But are the debates actually going to matter to voters? And what might we expect to see from Donald Trump and Joe Biden? Joining us to preview tonight's debate is Fox Politics reporter Paul Steinhauser. Always great to see you, Paul.
Great to see you guys on the road for the first time in 6 months. It's definitely a little strange being back on the campaign trail.
Love it. Actually talk a little bit about that. How you've covered so many of these debates. We talked to you, of course, during the primary when there were tons of people out and all that was going on. How does this compare energy-wise? Just kind of set the stage for us.
Very quiet. I mean, right now there should probably be 10 times as many reporters here in Cleveland as there are. The networks and everybody else bringing small contingents, much smaller than they normally would. Not a lot going on here, obviously. There's no spin room. The campaigns aren't here with their surrogates. There's not much to do. There's no after parties. There's no pre-parties. Because of COVID restrictions, everything is very low key here. The one thing that is the same is the security, a massive amount of federal, state, municipal, and local security here. Behind me, of course, that is the debate hall, and that is all right behind me are some big fences, and there's some serious security. So that's about the only thing that remains the same in this COVID world.
Mm-hmm. And so, Paul, I mean, in general, I guess you don't even have surrogates there to spin you. But, I mean, what is the spin kind of going into tonight's debate? I saw the Trump campaign has been trying to downplay expectations, saying, actually, no, Biden's actually a pretty good debater. Saw an interesting piece came out today in Politico saying, hey, I actually think Trump is the one who's underestimated given how well he did in 2016. What's your read on the situation?
It is interesting, the point you bring up there, Sagar. The Trump campaign for 6 months, the president, his campaign, surrogates, allied groups, they ridiculed this Biden as somebody who's out of touch, lost some miles off his speedball, senile, doesn't know where he is. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, they make a dramatic 180 and they say this is a guy who's a veteran debater. He's been doing it for 4 to 5 decades. I don't know if Americans are really going to buy that now after this 6-month onslaught. So unwittingly, the Trump campaign has lowered the bar a little bit for Joe Biden. You mentioned Politico. They had a poll out, though, and about 44% said they expected Biden to do better. 41% said they expected Trump to do better. The expectations are maybe not so high for either candidate, but I think they're still a little low for Joe Biden. All he needs to do maybe is show up, not have a major gaffe. Maybe he comes out of this relatively unscathed. But again, we all know the president does not play by the rules, and expect him to bring up Hunter Biden tonight, expect him to throw some other curveballs at Joe Biden. If Joe Biden gets angry, that's his downfall. Often when he gets angry, he makes mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And what do we expect out of the moderator tonight, Chris Wallace?
One thing we know for sure, Chris Wallace and all the moderators in all 4 of these debates will not be fact checkers. The Commission on Presidential Debates, that's that nonpartisan commission that's been putting these together for 4 decades. They said it's not the job of the moderator to fact check either the president or the former vice president. Wallace himself says he doesn't want to be the story. We know what his topics are. He's laid out last week the 6 topics, and they're some of the biggest issues that are rocking the nation right now, from that very nasty Supreme Court confirmation battle to the coronavirus, to the economy, to the unrest and violence in the streets, even to the integrity of this election. So we know what he'll be talking about, but also the big questions going in tonight are, will the candidates fact check each other? Will Joe Biden call President Trump a liar or vice versa? And how much I think it's pretty fair that the president will try to rattle Biden, bring up Hunter Biden and some other issues that are personal. Will Biden, and I think the answer is pretty much yes, bring up the New York Times report about taxes? Because that really hits home, especially to a middle class or a working class audience.
Yeah, I think that's right, Paul. I mean, it's going to be interesting. And also one of the things that Chris Wallace said is he wants it to be like a free-flowing debate. And once again, I mean, who do you think that benefits in this strategy? I mean, Biden has been knocked off on his feet a couple of times, has faced very few questions from the press in the last 6 to 7 months. I think he comes at it with a disadvantage, just knowing that he's going to face some difficult questions for the first time in a while publicly.
That's a very good point. Which Joe Biden are we going to see tonight? The one you just described, or are we going to see the Joe Biden who actually had a pretty solid debate in his last performance, which was in mid-March? It was just mano a mano, if you would say, him and Bernie Sanders. And he did get some pretty positive reviews for that. So which Biden shows up for tonight? Here's the game plan from Wallace. 6 topics, so 6 15-minute sections. Wallace asks a question to one of the candidates. That candidate gets 2 minutes to answer. Then the other gets 2 minutes to answer. That leaves 11 minutes for the candidates to really then open up the conversation and for Wallace to continue to interject when he feels he needs to. But yeah, it's going to be a very open-ended evening, and that could bring a lot of surprises.
And finally, Paul, of course, we all remember the 2016 debates between Hillary and Trump were relatively wild affairs. How did they ultimately move the polls, though? Were they ultimately beneficial for Trump? Did they have much of an impact? What's your read there?
You know, it's interesting. The debates happened at the same time that we had the Access Hollywood video. And of course, that instantly deflated Trump's poll numbers, but only for a week or two. And he was able to come back in the debate where he definitely went after Bill Clinton and tried to turn the tables. And that gave him a positive impact. That helped him rebound in the polls, let's say. Right now, going into these debates, it is crystal clear that Donald Trump needs to do something to change the conversation, the narrative. He has been behind. Forget about the national polls. More importantly, in the battleground state polls, he's trailing, not by a heck of a lot, but by enough. He needs to change that narrative. He hasn't been able to do that yet. These debates give him that last chance to do that before the election.
Yeah, certainly right. Well, Paul, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Great to see you, Paul.
Thanks, guys.
Next on Rising, enthusiasm for Trump, it spells trouble for Biden in the Rust Belt. And now, according to a recent poll, director of big data poll, Rich Barris, he's going to break down the numbers. That's when Rising continues.